You're listening to The Central Cast, a podcast for mystics and misfits just like you. The Central Cast is recorded before a live audience every week at our church in Glendale, California. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, all right. So as Bob had mentioned a few minutes ago, this last Sunday, last week, wasn't just May the 4th Sunday, but it was also the 6-year anniversary of the passing of Rachel Held Evans, one of the patron saints, if you will, of what we can call as progressive Christianity, especially for us Millennials and Gen Xers, of which she was, a part of our generation. She died in 2019 of complications from the flu. So about 6 months, really, or 7 months, almost a year before COVID, which is strange at the age of 37. This being both Mother's Day and the week after the anniversary of her death, I thought it was appropriate for us to honor her today as one of the spiritual mothers, if you will, of what's become known as progressive Christianity. And perhaps, one of the spiritual mothers to some of us personally speaking. And I know that applies to me. Many of us have read her books. We've read her articles. We've attended talks of hers. In fact, we booked her to speak at Central back in 2015 at our building. Remember that place, that building we had? Yeah. I counted 219 people there that night, which I think is the most we ever had ever. I met people who drove up from San Diego to come and see her speak at our church, which tells you the impact that she had on people's lives. We can all imagine if she was alive today, what she would be saying about our political predicament now and how evangelicalism has really played a key role in it. Apart from being just really genuine and kind and full of charisma, she was a brilliant writer and public speaker, which was really the secret of her success, in my opinion, I guess. She had the unique ability to communicate complex ideas very simply in ways that almost anybody can understand, and yet keeping them very compelling and cutting, which is not easy to do. This was really her talent, in my estimation. She was also a woman speaking from the context of growing up evangelical in small town Tennessee, aka the Bible Belt, which made her fascinating and a unique voice for those reasons as well. She started her career as a blogger. Remember blogs? This is kind of before the advent of social media, at least not like it is now. Facebook was still, I think, only on some college campuses. This is back in 2005. She was a blogger, writing mostly about deconstruction and critiquing evangelicalism and fundamentalism. She gained quite an online following, such that 3 years later, in 2008, she signed her first book deal with Zondervan, which is a huge Christian publisher based out of Grand Rapids, I think. Anyway, this book, her first book, was titled Evolving in Monkeytown, which was about her spiritual journey growing up in the Bible Belt and evolving away from fundamentalism and embracing a more intellectually honest faith. The title of that book comes from the fact that she grew up in Dayton, Tennessee. Dayton, Tennessee, for you historians, is the location of the famous Scopes trial in 1925, aka the Scopes monkey trial. This trial caught national attention for being about a public high school teacher who had the audacity to teach the theory of evolution, Darwinianism, right? In the public high school classroom. He was prosecuted for this because it was against the law at the time, in Tennessee at least, to do that. The Scopes trial was picked up by all the major newspapers in the nation and even carried on national radio. It was really the O.J. Simpson trial of the era. It caught that kind of attention. It was seen as this great battle, not just between faith and science, but between two segments of America, with liberal, educated, and secular America on one side and conservative, traditional, religious, and let's just say less educated America on the other side. Sound familiar? One could actually trace the culture war today back to many moments in U.S. history, but certainly to that one in 1925. It was really a seminal moment in U.S. history, demonstrating that Christian fundamentalism was a cultural force to be reckoned with and would remain so for quite some time. Rachel very much traced her own spiritual lineage back to that monumental event in her own hometown, no less, and how it shaped her family's worldview, it shaped her church, and of course, it shaped the greater American Christian culture of which she was a part of. And for this reason, her own deconstruction would be very much about needing to find an intellectually honest faith that took science seriously. That was actually a really big deal to her. She understood what others understood, like author and historian Mark Knoll, who once famously said, the problem with the evangelical mind is that there isn't much of an evangelical mind. They are a people without any questions, as someone else once put it. They are a people without any questions because they already have all the answers in their Bible. You know what I mean. If you grew up evangelical, you know what I mean. But Rachel understood that this anti-intellectualism was part of a much bigger problem in the church, much bigger ideological crisis that infected every aspect of evangelical thinking, from the way they read scripture, to the way they understood history and reality, to the way they understood gender and sexuality, to the way they understood race and class, etc. Nothing was left untouched by this anti-intellectual bias, anti-critical thinking bias, anti-questioning bias. In other words, Rachel understood that these biases and this mistrust of higher ed in the church actually functioned as a way of maintaining a lot of regressive ideas and traditions, like authoritarian patriarchy, misogyny, heteronormativity and homophobia, white supremacy, and of course, Christian supremacy in the public square. She understood it was all tied together by an embargo on free thought and critical thinking. And yet, she believed the church could still be a healing and positive force in the world if it could just let go of its fear, its lust for power, and its anti-intellectual bias and embrace love and truth instead. She wanted to, in essence, save the church from itself. She wanted to save Christianity from itself. Some would say it's a fool's errand. Let it die. It deserves to go. It's lost its use. The negatives outweigh the positives. She didn't think so. Maybe she had a vested interest, you know? She made her live in that way. But in order to fully understand Rachel, one must also understand the influence that liberation theology had on her. What is liberation theology? I've talked about that before here. Liberation theology is a term that originates in the 1960s to mostly describe the Catholic-led resistance movements taking place in Latin America, predominantly South America, again in the 1960s, against corrupt and wealthy landowners who were exploiting and oppressing the poor indigenous population, often in cahoots with local white governments, colonial governments there. Liberation theology holds that the heart of Jesus' teachings and mission was not personal salvation from eternal damnation, but a calling for us to live justly in the world and to care for the so-called least of these, the poor, the powerless, the destitute, the downtrodden, the marginalized, and to bring a healing and liberating love and peace into the social fabric of our lives and communities. This is liberation theology. As a quick aside, this is also the point of view of the new Pope, Pope Leo the 14th. I believe he's the 14th. Yes, he's an American, but he's also a Peruvian who spent a lot of his career living and working in South America, where he was exposed to liberation theology and became a deep proponent of it. Now, it's interesting, he's also an Augustinian monk, a monastic order that is notoriously pro-immigrant, pro-environment, and anti-materialist to the extent of being anti-capitalist. This is why Laura Loomer and other right-wing pundits are calling him a woke Marxist, right? And the name he chose, Leo, Pope Leo, is the name of the previous pope of the same name who was known for being a profound advocate of workers' rights. So yeah, I think the Catholic Church sent quite a message this week, intentionally, in their pick. But here's the thing about liberation theology that both he and Rachel would tell us. Liberation theology did not originate really in South America in the 1960s, in the 20th century, but in Israel in the first century. And of course, with Jesus of Nazareth himself, who taught like the Hebrew prophets before him. Now we're going back to the 5th and 6th century BCE. Jesus was part of a long line of Hebrew prophets who taught that God was opposed to the rich and the powerful for the ways that they oppress the poor, and that what God really wanted was not religious devotion and worship, but love and justice, compassion and kindness, especially for the downtrodden, for the orphan, for the widow, they would say back then. Today that translates, of course, to the poor, the destitute, etc., right? God's concerns, therefore, according to the Hebrew prophetic tradition and Jesus himself, God's concerns are not heavenly, but earthly. They said God's concerns are not religious, but social. The prophets said this. Jesus said this. This is liberation theology and the foundational view of both Rachel and Pope Leo's theology, their faith. Notice neither of them believe the gospel is about personal salvation and going to heaven when you die, which is pretty much how evangelicals would describe it. You all grew up, not all of you, but a lot of us grew up in that theology, right? It's all about personal salvation, getting out of hell and going to heaven and eternal rewards and mansions and glory beyond, right? Eternal bliss instead of eternal fire. Nonsense. And with regards to at least Rachel, she showed us that one can deconstruct and let go of that false gospel in favor of a gospel of love and liberation without losing one's faith. She showed us that one's faith can not only survive that deconstruction and transition, but actually thrive. She published 6 books before she died, but it was her second book that was really her most popular and the one that really propelled her into the national spotlight. It was called A Year of Biblical Womanhood. Anybody read that? Are you familiar with it? It was a New York Times bestseller. It was all about critiquing the idea of so-called biblical womanhood, which is to say it was about critiquing evangelical sexism, patriarchy, and traditional gender roles. She helped a lot of women believe that they can have an equal place both in the home and the church. She showed a lot of people that women leaders, particularly women pastors, can be just as capable as men. But her legacy was so much bigger than just challenging gender roles. She wrote extensively about racial justice, economic justice, and the need for LGBTQ inclusion in the church. Full inclusion, full affirmation. None of this mealy-mouthed halfway stuff. Bigotry with a smile. You're welcome here, but can't be in leadership. Nonsense, she would say. And this is where she was really most influential on me personally. It was back in 2014, 11 years ago now. I was at a conference in Chicago, the Gay Christian Network Conference. A gay member of our church invited me to go. I was kind of in this in-between place. Am I affirming? Am I kind of affirming? I don't know. We as a church had not come out yet as fully affirming, but we were sort of, halfway there. And so it was Jonathan Stein. Do you guys remember Jonathan Stein? Some of you are nodding, yeah. He since moved to Cleveland. God bless him. But anyway, he invited me to go to Chicago with him to the Gay Christian Network Conference. And it was there that I heard Rachel deliver a keynote address that really sealed the deal for me. And I remember a soundbite of hers from that address all these years later. I've shared it before, but I'll share it again. The gospel is scandalous, not because of who it keeps out, but because of who it lets in. The gospel is scandalous, not because of who it keeps out, but because of who it invites in. That's Jesus. And those words were an aha moment for me, and a way of putting into words what I think I already knew in my heart. You know what I mean by that? It's like the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? She was my teacher, and I was ready to hear. I was ready to listen. I was ready to be her student. So I left that conference. I got on the plane ride back to LA out of O'Hare. And I remember sitting on the plane, looking out the window and saying to myself, I'm affirming now. and I need to come out, as you, if you will, to the church and talk about this and teach it. I have to lead this church into this space. And I believed at the time that would be well received. See, people are often, oh, that sounds so courageous. No, it really wasn't. I knew we were ready for this. I mean, yeah, I was a little apprehensive. Wasn't sure how everybody would react. But the next Sunday, I taught on that. Some of you were here for that 11 years ago. And it wasn't that controversial for us as a church. I think most of us were ready for that transition in thinking. So she was a big part, though, of my journey. And I think collectively for us as well, because of all this. And for that reason, I want to honor her today on Mother's Day as one of our spiritual mothers. Yes, she really was. And I want to finish today by getting a little emotional. I want to finish today by reading this excerpt from her third book, Searching for Sunday. Anybody read Searching for Sunday or listen to it? Yeah, good. It's a great title, Searching for Sunday. I think it sums her up. This quote sums her up so well. She said this: "We're tired of the culture wars, tired of Christianity getting entangled with party politics and power. We want to be known by what we're for, not just what we're against. We don't want to choose between science and religion or between our intellectual integrity and our faith. Instead, we long for our churches to be safe places to doubt, to ask questions, and to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. We want to talk about the tough stuff: biblical interpretation, religious pluralism, sexuality, racial reconciliation, social justice, but without predetermined conclusions or simplistic answers. We want to bring our whole selves through the church doors without leaving our hearts and our minds behind, without wearing a mask." End quote. Isn't that good? That's who she was. That really sums her up in my mind. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts today about her legacy, what she meant to you, how she might have influenced you, and what do you think her legacy is? Or if you're not sure, and you don't want to comment on that, she would probably like this question. How do you define progressive Christianity? She was a big part, I think, of defining that for our generation. How do you define progressive Christianity? What is progressive Christianity? But yeah, anything anybody wants to talk about. I have a little microphone here since this is the way we're doing the podcast now. Yeah, sure.
The tiniest mic I've ever seen. Is it on? I don't know.
You don't have to hold it that close. You can hold it down here.
Okay.
That's cool.
I didn't really know. I don't know much about Rachel Held Evans other than what you share here, her quotes and things from her book. But you said she started in 2005. Is that what you said?
2005, roughly. Yeah, as a blogger.
And just thinking back to that time, like I was a wee babe, but just thinking even where I was as a growing person, like that is so brave.
Yeah.
Like what a brave woman.
Yeah.
Just thinking about how different that time period was from where we are now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's just a thought that I had, just how brave and stunning and world changing for her to do that at that time.
And from Dayton, Tennessee.
Yeah. I mean, my God, like.
Yeah, she wasn't in Los Angeles.
No.
Or New York. Yeah.
No. Yeah. And we can be a bubble a little bit here, but that's just huge. That's huge. That's all I have to say. It's huge.
She was made out of tough stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was. And she was really kind. We got a chance to meet her because we booked her to speak at Central, and behind the scenes, she was exactly who she was on stage. Yeah. No pretense, no prima donna stuff, even though she commanded, quite a significant honorarium, was a New York Times bestselling author, could really draw a crowd. She was awesome. Yeah.
I think that's just something too, that she drew a crowd, that there are a bunch of people who want to hear her message, who believe in that message.
Yeah.
That gives me hope in a time when there's little hope.
Yeah. That's right, Sarah. Yeah. Thank you. Good stuff. Anybody else want to reflect? Yeah, Abe.
I'll throw in a little bit of despair.
Oh, good.
Because one of the things that I was, as you're kind of speaking, that struck me is when I think back of what I thought might occur over the next 5 to 10 years, say in 2015 or 2016 or something like that. especially with regard to issues that she was quite concerned about. One of the things that I kind of find incredible about this era is there is this sort of like backlash against the kind of like more progressive sort of vision for women that Rachel Held Evans and others would have spoken about. That especially is increasingly common, especially among sort of like conservative and kind of MAGA types, of this like really bizarre kind of funhouse mirror traditional wife kind of culture, of, well, I marry a man that makes a lot of money and I stay at home and I dress in fancy clothes, and that is success. Like that is a vision of success. Like there are magazines that are published that are increasing in circulation that appeal to this kind of, it's on TikTok, it's on, in other words, it is a meaningful, growing kind of segment of our culture that is in itself kind of a backlash against feminism and all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of bring that up not as I don't even have a comment, really. Just I'm bewildered. Yeah, I'm just bewildered by it. By watching this all kind of unfold, and I don't know. It would be wonderful to have someone like Rachel Held Evans still around to maybe weigh in on it and possibly shed some light on it. And help us all understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
But it's a very strange and peculiar thing that like maybe when I first started reading about this kind of stuff, maybe 2-3 years ago, I just kind of shrugged it off, but it's like, it's not shrug offable anymore.
Right.
These are things that are really happening. This is sort of a way of thinking about life, specifically about a woman's life and a woman's role in society, that has real appeal for a very large number of people.
Yeah.
And it's just, like I said, it's just bewildering.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what she would say about all that, because she would definitely say something. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Abe. Michelle. Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in on what phrase you use, Abe, to can't shrug it off. And that's something that was like an undercurrent type thing for me for so many years, about how I really wished and thought it would be great if I would fit in with the homogenized Christianity, if you will. It could be, going along to get along and have all the answers. But there was just something there that said, yeah, but this is what they say and this is how they present themselves. But what about the people right out there around us that, within the congregation or outside, that need love and support, and we're in our little world of doing this and that, but we don't see them. We don't, recognize what's going on. And that just didn't feel like what the essence of Jesus was about to me. I couldn't really, cite chapter and verse, but I just felt that it was about loving others and demonstrating that in whatever that means, how you do it on a daily basis. And I just kept searching and searching. And finally I wound up here, and it's like, this is okay. I can not have the same idea, and I won't be criticized or looked at like I'm strange if I question things. So I'm now inspired to go get a couple of her books and read, because it's just another layer of what I have here, of letting me know it's okay not to just go along and accept it
Right.
without thinking. That it just seemed wrong to me.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Michelle. Yeah. Adam, welcome.
Hi. You kind of opened this up by asking people their thoughts about like what we might describe or define progressive Christianity as. And then she was sharing something about the bravery of Rachel for moving forward in time when such beliefs were even less commonly accepted. And I'm thinking about how I think one of the things that could tie these things together is that to make progress, to advance in whatever that sense is, as a species, as a religion, as an individual person, it is kind of necessary to stare uncomfortable questions in the face and to be really brave when you look at those things and to try to determine what the wisest or kindest way forward is. not the most comfortable, reassuring thing. And I think what you were saying about how, on the whole, in general, evangelicals are people without question, it seems like that is out of a place of comfort, and it's preferable, and it's safer and easier and nicer to think, oh yeah, well, there's problems right now, but when I die, it'll all be taken care of. Going to a cozy little Gold Street palace, right?
You got it.
But I think it's the point of wanting to make progress is to look at those difficult things and to try to find truth and wisdom and go forward with that.
Being willing to confront difficulties.
Yeah, preconceived notions
and ambiguity, or the cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. Yeah,
and sit with it and not pretend like everything's fine. And,
right.
And to shirk one's moral responsibilities in the world.
Yeah, and I think that is what progressivism is, even in a broader sense outside of any religion. Personally, I love progressive music, and it makes you feel uncomfortable or surprised.
Yeah.
And that is why you keep wanting to listen to it. Whereas other statements are just there to ease you into oh yeah, it's fine, it's safe, it's simple,
Yeah. No, and that's certainly something that I think is at the root of the problem, even that you brought up, Abe, is this kind of desire for simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
The whole trad wife thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And what conservatism in general offers is this power structure that promises simplicity and certainty to a certain group of people, and promises them, power and, again, certainty and simplicity in all of that, right? And we all want those things. Who doesn't
Mm-hmm.
want a simple, easy life and to be in a position of privilege and power? Who doesn't want all those things? But the difficulty comes in when you have to recognize that, asserting power and dominance and ignoring reality,
Mm-hmm.
ignoring the difficult truths of our lives, comes at a heavy price.
Right.
It means harming others, innately harming others. It's an act of violence to yourself and to others. And again, but all those are progressive ideas, but are actually true.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, yes, they're progressive. They're in the progressive category, but they're actually true.
Right.
But that's really difficult, because I think as Peter Rollins has been a huge influence on me from a psychotherapy kind of approach, or a psychological approach, we all innately crave certainty and simplicity and
Mm-hmm.
comfort as a species. I mean, we evolved to seek those things out. Who doesn't want those things, right? We have to fight our biology
Mm-hmm.
to acknowledge or to face difficult truths, and to embrace uncertainty and unknowing and uncomfortability, and to follow the anxiety
Mm-hmm.
where it leads. But yeah, religion's often about meeting those kinds of innate primal needs for certainty and security and comfort. And that's really sad.
It should be about searching for truth and love.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Rachel was about, right? And that's what I think a lot of progressive churches are about to some degree. We perhaps more so than others. We're described as a very dark church.
With this artwork, no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It kind of clears the pews, because people want to go to church to be given certainty, and we don't really offer that. We offer, this is life.
Mm-hmm.
This is life, and maybe in the radical embrace of that, we can find some serenity, some joy, some peace. I think so. Through the crucifixion, we find resurrection, but you got to undergo the crucifixion first, the death of certainty, the death of the God that you grew up with and relied on for all those, and embrace the God who is present with us in love, in kindness, in compassion, and justice. Again, those are progressive ideas, but they're true ideas. Now, thanks, Adam. That was really, you sparked all that thought. Anyway, thank you. Yeah. Anybody else want to share anything today? Okay. Well, good stuff, everybody. Thanks for listening in on this week's edition of the Central Cast. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you join us next time. Bye-bye.